Joining us now to break down the day's development is Rogan O'Handley, also known by his social media name, DC Drano. He's a lawyer and a civil rights activist. So Rogan, this latest development, I noticed this morning when I was turning on CNN, MSNBC, for example, they were saying that the idea of Bahrain and Israel once again coming to this agreement under the Trump administration's eye is nothing more than a political ploy. But I think it's worth noting that a lot of people in the Middle East probably see this as a very promising development. What do you make of what you've seen so far from this achievement?
If this is a political ploy, then I want dozens more just like it. Yeah. For decades, we, the American people, and so many across the Middle East, literally millions, have wanted peace, and it has not even come close. We've had destabilization across many countries. President Trump promised to draw down troops in Iraq. He's done that. He's stabilized Syria, and now he has a policy that I call restabilization, not destabilization. So this is only the fourth country since 1948, fourth Arab country that Israel now has been recognized by. Two of those countries in 72 years were orchestrated by President Trump. What a start in only little under 4 years.
I mean, that is amazing. And it comes on a day, too, that I think is a little bit symbolic or representative of the transition that's taken place over the last 19 years. Of course, 19 years is really what propelled us into the war in Afghanistan, and then shortly after it was Iraq. And that led to decades of our troops in the Middle East. That led to decades of destabilization. In fact, there was a recent report that said 37 million people throughout the Middle East were destabilized by conflict. I mean, that's something that every American, every human being for that matter, should really be weary about. I understand that sometimes conflict is necessary, but we needed to get out of this at some point. So what do you make of the transition from where we were 19 years ago?
Well, I think it's incredible. And, you know, looking at the previous administration, they went into Libya, and in the words of former Secretary of State Clinton, she says, "We came, we saw, he died." And then as a result of Gaddafi going down, millions of people started flooding into Europe, absolutely destabilizing not only the Middle East, but Europe as a whole. Under President Trump, that mass migration has stopped or slowed substantially. And now we have peace treaties being made. This is astounding. I'm still absorbing the gravity of what's going on with North Korea, with drawing down in Syria, drawing down in Iraq. This is incredible. This is what America is all about. And what a transition over the last 20 years. Finally, we have a president that wants to bring the troops home, not further send them overseas to fight and die and further destabilize things. So God bless President Trump. What a great day for America, and a very symbolic day at that, to happen on the 19th anniversary of 9/11.
I think you're exactly right. And I think it's also worth noting that this, for example, withdrawing troops from the Middle East, that isn't coming at the sacrifice of security. I mean, ISIS, for example, is something that we have not been talking about as of recently, and that is a very good development. I mean, there was a time where we talked about the destabilization in the Middle East and the migrating populations into Europe, for example. Much of that came as a result of Syria being destabilized, Iraq being destabilized, ISIS. I mean, we saw the videos that were coming out, and that was something that I'm very happy to say we have not been reporting on as of recently. So when it comes to all of this as well, I mean, there are lessons to be learned. There's been failed examples as well. You laid out Libya. There's been situations where U.S. intervention may have not been the right move, but this big picture that we're looking at right now, are there lessons to be learned, both from a political standpoint, a military standpoint, maybe even a media standpoint, that we can take moving forward?
I think the number one lesson to be learned is that peace is possible. We now have a blueprint. Whatever President Trump and Jared Kushner and his administration have been doing to orchestrate these peace deals, they need to be replicated and expanded upon in all future administrations, which hopefully it's a second Trump administration. But peace is now possible, and it doesn't require tanks, planes, driving into, the capitals of these countries, taking over, and then spending the next 10 years just trying to keep things somewhat stable. So peace is possible, and also measured troop drawdowns are possible in these countries that still maintain peace. When President Obama took the troops out of Iraq, ISIS flourished, and we had one of the most barbaric organizations thriving in the Middle East. President Trump not only defeated them, but he has stabilized Iraq, and he's allowed to now allowed to be able to pull down these troops safely and securely, which is great for not only the American people, but the people in these countries where they live. There are real people here that are affected by this. Thank God we're finally seeing peace take over the Middle East.
I think you're exactly right. And I think strategically, too, there's something to take away. In the past, it seems as if other administrations, to some degree, have been trying to appease Iran or appease Hamas in order to achieve that peace. But I think the moving of the embassy is one example. And I think, for example, the troop withdrawal is another example that the U.S. can lead in the Middle East and can help these other countries come up with their own solutions without warfare and without actually having to appease to these other organizations that have been violent in the past. So I think you're exactly right to say that the optimism of peace is something that every American, every human being should be taking out of this situation with a great degree of optimism. But Rogan O'Handley, I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight and breaking down this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much.